All right, we're live. So we'll go over this. Some people will probably be filtering in, I'm guessing. Um, but we'll start. We'll go over this, and then what I wanted to do, either feedback from you guys, like, hey, can you do an example like this one, or if you just want to actually go over, like, hey, can you do number 5 on the review sheet again, or just talk about it. Either of those things, whatever you want. Otherwise, if no one has anything to say or ask, I can kind of just freestyle. But yeah. So for this one, we were given the circumference is 12 pi. Right away, we see it's in terms of pi, and you were asked the area in terms of pi. So let's just refresh what those formulas are. You do need to know these for tomorrow. So we have circumference is pi times diameter, and area is pi r squared, pi times radius squared. Okay, and we know the relationship, obviously, that the diameter is 2 radii, 2 times the radius. Okay. Um, so when we look at that circumference is 12 pi, that's giving us information. What information we can pull out of that is the fact that the diameter is 12 units, whatever it happens to be here, 12 inches, whatever. Okay. Why is that useful? Once we know the diameter, we also know the radius. If I know the diameter is 12, I know the radius is 6. And that's all you need for area, right? I'm going to write it down here. Now, in my area formula, I would replace r with 6. 6 squared is going to give me 36 pi. If I said, hey, what is the area to the nearest tenth? Then you would just obviously type in 36 times pi using your calculator and using the pi function on your calculator. That's important as well. Okay. All right. What are all the lessons that will be on the test? Okay. Um, I don't want to sit and list them out, but I'll give you kind of like the general topics that are on there. We have and I'll abbreviate a little bit. We have combining like terms, CLT. We have equations. We have inequalities. We have word problems from each. A lot of the review sheet was obviously a lot of word problems, right? Um, Word problems and circles. I know that's only like 5 bullet points, but there's a lot of lessons in between these. But those are the major topics on this test. Questions from you guys? Something on the review sheet. I do have the quizzes file here. If you're like, I didn't get this one on the quizzes, if you want to take a look at that. If you want me to make up an example, I could do that as well. Questions? Can we do equations? Sure. Like a word problem? There won't be a straight up solving one. Let's do an equation word problem, I guess. So uh, let's say we buy 3 boxes of cereal. Tough to just like writing down the bullet points from the word problem. 3 boxes of cereal that are $4.99 each, and we buy 5 bottles of soda. Okay, and we end up spending a grand total of let's say we end up spending a grand total of 24.72. So one thing that's important sometimes with a question like this, we'd want to jump right to the answer, but let's focus on this first. Let's create an equation. Sometimes it's called like modeling or creating. So let's create an equation that can be used to find the cost of a bottle of soda. Let's call it S for soda. So take a moment. Let's create an equation that could be used to figure out how much each bottle of soda is, and then we'll actually solve it. Because sometimes we just want to like, oh, the answer is $2. The answer is this. Let's actually model this one first. Let's model this first. Yeah. So if you were modeling this, one thing that you could do is, First of all, we know how much we spent on cereal. We bought 3 boxes and they were 4.99 each. So you could either put that into your model like as the multiplication, or you could figure out what that's going to be ahead of time. Plus, we buy 5 bottles of soda. We want to know what each of them cost. So we're going to call that 5S, and then we set it equal to 24.72. Okay, this would be your model. If this was like a written question, this is perfectly fine. Now, if we were actually solving this, we would say, hey, 14.97, that's what like 3 times 4.99 is. And if we want to show our work here, I get rid of that 14.97 by doing the opposite. I'm going to subtract it from both sides. I'm going to get 5S equals, what is that? 9.75. And now I divide both sides by 5, and you should get S, a bottle of soda, is $1.95. $1.95 for a bottle of soda. Okay? Modeling and solving, both pieces are important here. While we're talking about word problems, let's try an inequality word problem as well. Those are the ones what adds an extra trick with inequality is they don't always work out perfect or exact, and we have to kind of gauge how we should round. Those are like that bottom row on the review sheet, like 7, 8, and 9, I believe. And there's a few on the back as well. Okay, so for this, we had, let's say we're buying a box of spoons. Let's say we have, or we need 500 spoons. We currently have 190, and they come in boxes of 24. What's the minimum number of boxes we need to reach our goal? Like we're throwing a party, we need a lot of spoons for some reason, we need 500. We have 190. We can only buy them in boxes of 24. What's the minimum number of boxes? Take a moment. Once again, we'll try to set this up. We'll try to like identify an actual inequality here. We'll set up an inequality and then we'll solve. All right. So if we have 190, we could just say like starting with a constant of 190. And to figure out how many boxes we need, we could say plus 24b. And I guess, there's a few ways you could set up your sign. Really, obviously, we want like, I suppose, a minimum of 500. Okay. Taking away the 190 that we already have, what we actually need is 310, right? Can someone with a calculator help me out? When you divide 310 by 24, what is that decimal about? What is it to? I know it doesn't work out perfectly. Or does it? It's about 12.9. Okay. So that's 310 divided by 24. So this is where people are confused. Like, do I say 12 or do I say 13? And you could probably pretty much guess, just like the quizzes today, like if this was multiple choice, I would probably be evil enough to put both. I would put 12 as a choice and I'd put 13 as a choice. So what we actually have to answer here is 13. Okay. One of the classes today, someone said like, how are you supposed to know when to round down? Because there are problems where we round down. Those are usually ones like, how many games can you afford? How many of this can you buy? You round down if you have less than or equal to, because those are problems that deal with like, oh, what's the most amount of games I could play? What's the maximum? Notice how this was asking minimum. We had greater than or equal to. So you kind of follow the sign to determine how you're going to round in your answer. Greater than, you're rounding up. Like, hey, B has to be bigger than 12.9. And obviously we can't have decimals. Um, so that's why we say 13. Alrighty. Other questions from you guys? Questions? Question on the review or quizzes? Question on the review or quizzes from today? I'll pull up quizzes. Let's take a look at that because I know we like talked about each one, but this should be up right now in Google Classroom. If it's not, I'll post it shortly after this. But let's just take a look at some of the quizzes choices. We talked about it verbally, but I didn't get to write all these out. So number one was a combining like terms question. We have A. The trick here is that people forget that A is one, I guess. But otherwise, it's kind of hard to get this wrong because you're just adding numbers or subtracting them if it says subtract. So 1 plus 2 is 3, minus 0.13 is going to be 287a. Okay, here's a good example of what we just did a little earlier, an equation word problem. Hey, it's $200 plus 850 per person, 850 each. So that's my variable, 850x, 8.5x. I subtract 200 from both sides. I divide by 153 to get 18. And this is at the end of the day, it's multiple choice. Like, oh, did you have to show all that? I just knew the answer. No, for multiple choice, especially if you're worried about time, multiple choice, you can just answer. I'm showing you the full extent of how you would do it. For number three, we have a triangle. We're given the three sides. This is color coded here, combining like terms. So combine your x's together, combine your y's, and combine your z's. One thing to be careful of, if we have subtraction, we're treating that like a negative when we do the actual combining like terms part. Okay, this one people didn't do so well on. So let's take a closer look at this. First of all, anytime we see something outside a set of parentheses, we have to distribute. So I distribute the 5 to 2x minus 3. Now I can start combining like terms. I combine 10 and 1x to give me 11x. So right away, a and d should have been out because it should have been 11x. And now my constant, you could use this on your calculator. I did it like manually here, like getting a common denominator. It's just basically negative 15 combined with negative 2/3. So basically negative 15 minus 2/3. Notice the answer is an improper fraction. That's fine. Like when we were going over the review sheet, some of you guys said, "Oh, I gave a decimal." If you see the improper fractions, just be able to recognize it. If you're not sure what it is, like if you're not sure what 47 over 3 was, just in your calculator, hit 47 divided by 3 and check to see it matches however you wrote it as a decimal or a proper fraction. This question wasn't very well liked either, but it was just basically area. And you'll see something like this. Hey, it was on the review sheet, it was on the quizzes. You could probably see where this is going, right? So comparing the areas of two different shapes here, we have area of a circle, cut that diameter in half, square it times pi. Area of the rectangle is 96. And then it basically is like asking which of these is true. So yeah, the rectangle is bigger by about 32.4. Just be careful with circles. Sometimes you just dive right into it quickly. That would be d equals 9. We wouldn't want to use 9. That would be the diameter, not the radius. We've seen this. Hey, circumference is 20 pi. Right away, diameter is 20. Right away, diameter is 20. You give me the circumference, that's the number. You give me the circumference, that's the diameter, right? The number is the diameter, which means r is 10, which means squared, that's 100 pi. These questions should be pretty quick, pretty simple. This isn't a question that takes you like 10 minutes. This is like one of the easier questions if you know what to do. Number 7, Dimitri and Cindy go to the movies. Um, we talk about this with money. Hey, we have $40. I have $40. I can't spend more than $40. So right away, I would cross off like A and C. How can you spend more than $40 if you only have 40? So it's between B and D. B just has the variable in the wrong spot. Hey, they bought 2 tickets. That's just 12. Shouldn't be 12x. The variable is the snacks, which are $3 each. So that's the 3x. Okay. This one was kind of similar to the spoons one we just did. You get about 21.8, which means you have to round up. Look at choice A. Some of you guys might have during the quizzes fell for that and circled A or chose A on your iPads. It ends up being 22. We have to round up, says the word minimum. Hey, I need 22. 21's not going to cut it. Number 9, right away, diameter is 28, which means the radius is 14. This would probably be the easiest question, I would say, right? You do this in 2 seconds. And last one, this one was a little weird. Let's look at this closely. What's weird about this one? It is an equation, but what's weird about the choices? What would you say is weird about the choices? There's a reason why they're written this way too. What's weird is it's not written in like the normal way of writing this one, let's call it, would be like this, right? So it's written in this like solved fashion, like everything's solved for, without giving you the answer also. Like it would have made sense if it just said like x equals whatever this ends up being, however much money it ends up being. But I guess it's testing your ability that you knew how to solve it. So if you were solving this, you would subtract 578 and you would divide by 4. That's it. Questions with the quizzes or the review sheet? I won't go back over the review sheet, but any questions with quizzes or the review or another topic you want to see an example of? Questions. How do you do the inequality equations? Well, those are two different things. Inequalities are separate than equations. Area of circles. Okay. Um, circles. So let's try a circle. So first of all, we know the area formula, right? Pi times, I'll write it out. Usually you just say r, but r squared or radius squared. Okay. Um, so let's say for this circle, got a nice perfect circle. And we know this is 36 centimeters. Let's find the area two ways. Let's find it first in terms of pi, and then to the nearest hundredth. Hundredth. Pi, and then hundredth. Take a moment. On the review, I saw an equation with the alligator things. Which number, Martina? Yeah, if it says inequality, you would be writing an inequality. Both, Hera, in terms of pi and hundredth. Um, if it says inequality, you'd have one of those four symbols. If it's an equation, you'd have an equal sign. So those are two separate categories. They're similar. They're definitely similar. Where is everybody? We have like 10 people. Everyone's gonna watch the recording. Um, yeah, so here we're given a circle at 36. You visually have to know what it is. So visually looking at it, we see that's a diameter. They don't tell you it's a diameter, which means we have to make it a radius. We make it a radius, which is 18. We cut it in half, right? Divide by 2, multiply by half, same thing. Now, let's do in terms of pi first, because that's kind of what you would type in first, I suppose. That's just going to be pi times 18 squared. You wouldn't want to leave it like that. I think someone asked that in another class. You'd want to actually do the squaring. Yes, it's in terms of pi, you didn't multiply it out, but simplify what you can. We can figure out that 18 squared is 324 pi. Good. And now what is this? Now we can type it in. I also asked you like a part B here. What is it to the nearest hundredth? People are saying 1017.88. It's important that you use the pi button versus 3.14. There is a difference. Using the pi button is going to be more exact versus 3.14 is kind of like rounding a little too early. So make sure if you're ever calculating something, you use the pi button. Just do 320. If you don't have a calculator on you, it's going to be difficult. I don't think the iPhone calculator has one, unless you tilt your phone like sideways, it might. Um, 324 times pi. 324 times pi. And then hundredth is 2 decimal places. Tenth is 1 decimal place. Hundredth is 2. All right. Let me pull up the test. Not that I'm going to share it with you guys. I just want to look over it as I go over some things here. All right, combining like terms. I mean, if you look at the review sheet, there should be no surprises. Okay, this is one thing I want to take a look at. Uh, the only thing that I could see being a little weird. Everything else is I like to give no surprises on my test. This is something that was a little weird. So let's do one like this. It involves inequalities. Okay, we'll go with circles. So this is a multiple choice that's just a little weird, and I want to talk about not the question, but the way the choices are written. So, example 4, I do have to end by 4:30. Um, let's say we need 80 reward points at what store? At Best Buy. Um, let's say we currently have 25, and every purchase gets you 3 points. Every time you go in there and buy something, you get 3 more reward points. Let's write an inequality to figure out how many purchases we need, P. How many more purchases we need to reach our goal of having, hey, I want 80 points, you get whatever, you get a free game if you get 80 reward points. Okay? So that's your goal here. You want 80 reward points, you have 25, and every time you buy something, you're going to get 3 per purchase. So let's call our variable P. Yeah, I know some of you guys are solving it here, but it's the setup. So I don't even care about what the answer is. Let's just model it. That's not even going to be the question. That's not even going to be like the choices. So let's model it. This is what I'm talking about. It's a little weird. So we have 25, right? Every purchase is going to contribute 3 points. So how would I write that? 3p. Just be careful, Amelia. I know I'm writing shorthand, but let's write it as an inequality. So let's say we want at least 80 points. We want at least 80 points. We want a minimum of 80 points. What symbol would we use? Good. Greater than equal to. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about. The only thing I don't like about the choices for this question, this was a state exam question that I threw onto your test, um, is it's written the other way. So if you got that, great. Well, so what do you think I mean by written the other way? I don't think most people write it like this. Some of you guys maybe do, but the choice, the answer choice you would select would be like this. So, what I would recommend, so those two are the same, spoiler alert. These two are the same thing. Okay. What I would recommend if that's confusing you, like you look at all four choices and you see all four of them have it like written the non-traditional way, let's call it. The non-traditional way of like the constant on the left-hand side. What I would recommend is write it your normal way first. So like write it like this. Okay, I know that's not the choice, but now it makes it easier to compare it, and you're just going to make sure it kind of matches up. So notice how the inequality, it sounds like we're in a kindergarten lesson, but the inequality sign is like opening up towards the 25 plus 3p. You would then want to select that choice. So it makes it a lot easier to compare like, oh, okay, this and this are saying the same thing. Hey, the inequality is opening up towards the same expression. All right, guys. Math 7 students, we'll call it quits there. I'm going to stop recording. Still recording.